The Georgia Bulldogs take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. We take on our in-laws. It's Thanksgiving week on Dog Post. Ryan doesn't quite know what that's like yet. So some of us are on location. Some of us are in our usual places. This is going to be a tough one for the Jackets, Matt.
Yeah, cute little win over North Carolina last weekend. But yeah, this is the same team that lost 2 weeks ago to a terrible, terrible Miami team. So Zach Gibson, backup quarterback, played at Johns Creek, I believe. I felt like I was just covering him. Just not as talented a quarterback that you're going to find to beat Georgia. He does. I mean, they don't have the talent. They don't have the coaching staff. They don't have the depth. Not many teams do, but you're right. Georgia Tech is going to have a really tough time in Athens. Kirby said that they've been practicing hard all week. They've had a great group of practices. He even, spoke to the team about what the history of this game means. I know, for these players who are 22 and younger, they don't know a whole lot about what this game used to be and the fights that used to happen in the 90s and, in those early or the mid 2010s. I mean, this used to be kind of a back and forth game, but Georgia's won 17 out of the last 20. They've dominated the last 4 games. And I don't think it's going to be any different this week, Ryan.
No, I think it'll be more of the same. I think they're definitely locked in for what's to come, just based off of the press conferences and the conversations. Kirby said, they look at us like dinosaurs, the coaches, so they don't try to use like past Georgia Tech, Georgia rivalry too much in their coaching, just because some of them just don't care as much as him. I mean, they will care. The younger guys will learn to care. But older guys like Christopher Smith, Kyrus Jackson, ones that have been around, that have been in the program a lot, they understand what it means for the coaching staff and what it will mean for the younger guys. But these programs, like all of Georgia's 3 traditional rivals, they're all kind of disasters right now. All have fired their coach within the last calendar year. Don't really know what's next. Not sure if it's going to get better. Georgia's just in the complete opposite position as those programs. They have an opportunity to go 12-0 again on senior day in Athens and make another run at a championship. I think that they'll dismantle Georgia Tech again.
It's a very good point that, and even, we've seen Auburn, Georgia Tech, the Gators. We've seen a lot of turnover in the league, generally speaking. For the Jackets, it's just hard to really put into words how far that athletic department has fallen over the last, during this century. Um, Georgia Tech has always been a big rival of Georgia. I wouldn't say it was the biggest when we were children growing up. It probably was the biggest or second biggest game behind Florida. But I don't think Ryan really has a great understanding of it necessarily, and I wouldn't expect him to. I don't mean that in a bad way. Georgia Tech has not proven to make itself be taken seriously over the last decade. They've won twice in that time, in 14 and 16, but you cannot compare these two. It is like comparing, you know, discount airliners and Delta. They're not in the same universe at all. I don't know if Georgia Tech, one problem for Tech is they've chosen this path. I think it's a mistake. They need to try to win. If I were a Tech, I know a lot of Tech folks just from growing up in Atlanta, family members, etc. It's not good enough. And I don't, and they've made some bad decisions with Paul Hewitt, etc. But there's really no excuse for them to be in the position that they are. I will toss this to you, Matt. I was talking with someone not that long ago that does have an understanding of all things athletics in not just in the state but college football nationally, and asked, "Do you think that Tech and Georgia will play in the future?" And he said he wasn't sure.
And it's really tough because it's a game that I think everyone kind of looks forward to in the state. You have Thanksgiving, and then 2 days later you have this game. And it is, as crazy as it sounds, it's a must-win game. I mean, just ask Jim
No
Donnan and
question.
Mark Richt. If you
Yeah.
lose this game, your job's going to be on the line. The 14 loss firmly put Mark Richt on the hot seat, losing that game. And Jim Donnan lost 3 straight. And, Kirby lost that one game in 16. But I don't know if Kirby's ever going to lose to Georgia Tech again. They're never going to have the talent that Georgia does. And Georgia's rolling right now. Tech is kind of taking a nosedive where Georgia is reaching its full potential as a program. They could not be farther from each other. Georgia Tech doesn't have the right quarterback play right now. They don't have
No, they
that
don't.
toughness that you need. And again, they're just so far apart. The line's 35.5. Is that the biggest line, Dean, that we've seen in this game? And I think Georgia's going to cover.
Well, last year it was 35, Ryan, and these two teams were not in the same universe. The question, the worry I would have talking about, I do want to talk about Tech just a little bit more before we move on, but the worry I would have about investing in this game is, if Georgia gets up 20-ish, Ryan, they're going to shut it down.
Yeah, that's been the case for a lot of games this year where in the second half they just slow it down. Oregon is kind of an outlier, and it was a beating through about 3/4 and then they shut it down. But since then it's been, if we're up in the second half, it doesn't really matter how big the lead is. If it's double digits, we're going to slow this down. We're going to finish this game out.
And Mark Richt, by the way, Ryan and Matt, but Ryan, go ahead. Mark Richt people would jump all over him when he did this. It's just the way it is in coaching. You want to be Josh Heupel, when it's time to win, you just shut it down. But anyway, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, they should blow through them again in a similar way they did last year. It's not much has changed for either of these programs at all since that game, and they just swamped them to a 45-0 win. I think it'll be similar this year. It might not be as many points, but I don't see Georgia Tech scoring at all in Athens. I just don't.
Yeah.
You're not wrong when you say I don't understand the rivalry completely, because when I was born this century, 2001, grew up watching, and Georgia handles them almost every single year. It's not something that my generation grew up watching and worried about going into that game. It wasn't a weekend that you came in worrying about, because Mark Richt and Kirby Smart, since I've been alive, and that's who you can remember watching, it's been a one-sided rivalry.
So I'll quickly review what it was like growing up in Atlanta with this game. And I think a lot of folks who are over 30 will understand where I'm coming from. Georgia Tech has always pushed off it's not just a vibe, it is a very real, they will tell you that they are just better than you are. And the one area that they've never been that at is athletics. In the 80s with Bobby Crimmins, when Tech started really rolling in basketball, that was where you saw, to me, it really manifest, because those two were not the same in football either in the early 80s. Bill Curry helped the Jackets get along their way, but there's always this particular nose in the air about being a Georgia Tech engineer. It's a great school, and it needs to continue to be a great school. But what they're confronting right now is Georgia is right on their back in terms of an academic institution. They know it. They're freaking out a little bit, and that matters to them a lot. For the old money, for the drink my whiskey Tech crowd, they're all dying, and the suburbanites, that were all Tech folks, they're not around anymore. And at Tucker, I would say there were, for every 8 Georgia people, there were 2 or 3 Tech. Now I would say it's more, 12-1, and it's just disappeared. It's sad. It's one of the great rivalries in the South, but Georgia Tech's not done its part. And I think that I am skeptical that the state legislature will ever let this game go away. I'm not sure that's the most important thing for lawmakers to be concentrating on, but I think this game could shift to the start of the season. That's something I've heard for when I ask these questions, will Georgia Tech and Georgia ever play? I've never been told no until this year, and it was not by somebody at Georgia. Secondly, when I've always asked these questions, the answer is always they'll always play, but it might not be at the end of the year. We've seen the shifting of television, the college football shifting because of television, Matt. we could see this game shift to the beginning of the year. I know the people at Chick-fil-A would love to open the season with this game. I know the people at Georgia Tech would hate for it to be at the Dome. But, Tech's doing all it can do to be relevant, playing the games at the Dome. They need to hire a capable and competent head coach. That's been another problem for them lately. But I'm not suggesting the game's going to go away. I'm not. But I think that it will change at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, I like a schedule. I like this game being played after Thanksgiving at the end of the regular season. I'd rather, see Georgia play Georgia Tech at the beginning of the season than have the game completely go away. You still see the hatred, even though Georgia's coming into this game for the past several years, with championships on their mind, and Georgia Tech isn't. You can still see the fire and the passion these players have. Just ask George Pickens, who an Alabama native, came in smashing a bug against the wall. He gets it. He was competing that day. And you see a lot of these in-state kids, they get it. Kirby played for Georgia. Will Muschamp played for Georgia. Mike Bobo, Brian McClendon had a big catch in that 05 game.
Mike Bobo is very sensitive about this game.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're an old Georgia person, you would be. I mean, when Mike found Corey Allen in the corner at Bobby Dodd, Margaret Field, there was just that was one of the all-time great moments in the rivalry. Frankly, whenever Georgia Tech wins, it's an all-time game because the games are usually not tight like that. I mean, their win in '99,
it means
Georgia,
everything to them.
Oh,
everything to them. Yeah,
it is the biggest game for Tech every year, no matter what. When you have the other team in your fight song, it tells you that you're constantly thinking about them. Texas A&M has the same problem. So it's a wonderful rivalry. I'm not trying to suggest it's going away. I actually think it will stay at the end. I'm certain it will not go away, but I actually do think it will go at the end because of some stuff. I mean, Georgia, I don't know who they would end the season with. It's not going to be Florida. They're probably not playing Tennessee as time goes on. I don't think they're going to close the season with Kentucky. It just is natural to continue to play Tech at the end of the year. I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility. Last night, Georgia was ranked number 1 again, Ryan. I don't know what your overall reactions to the rankings were. I have to say I've given Clemson a lot of grief this year. I don't really like this committee very much. The putting Clemson at 8 behind Alabama. Well, first of all, I don't know if that's right or not. I think Alabama will beat Clemson. Okay, I do. But Clemson seems to be done, right? I mean, like, they're that far back. I mean, that would suggest that if chaos happens, that Clemson would have to jump like 5 teams to get it happen. It seems like there's no chance. I'm not sure I understand that particular part. All the rest of it, I think, made sense. But the Dogs number 1. What did you make of the rest of that, Ryan? LSU's at 5 with 2 losses.
Well, I just think they're inconsistent. You have to choose between most deserving and best, and you see them teeter back and forth. Just pick one, and we'll all be okay with it, and we'll deal with it. But if you keep going back and forth on what the actual criteria of where a team's going to be ranked, then it just doesn't have as much value to it.
Maybe someone would know off the top of their head what Alabama's, and I'm not trying to run Alabama down here. I'm legitimately asking the question: Is Alabama's best win? Matt, Ole Miss, I guess, or like who is this? Because Clemson's is Florida State, and if it's about resume, let's make it about resume. I mean, it can't be Texas. It can't be Texas A&M as their best win.
It could be Texas. I mean,
okay,
Texas,
well, they're not better than Florida State. Look, I think Alabama would beat Clemson. But I'm just saying, like, which is it here? These idiots had NC State ranked last week.
I mean, they did this knowing that, okay, we'll just move Clemson ahead of Alabama if they beat North Carolina. Just do it now. Just do it now then. So I don't know if they're basing it on the eye test, like Ryan said, most deserving, best resume. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but they're not all on the same page, it seems. And they really like LSU. I mean, if LSU beats Florida State, they're number 5. They lost to LSU.
I was a little surprised.
State, and they're still number 5.
Go ahead.
I was a little surprised with I thought that USC was going to jump to 5. I was surprised that they shifted LSU up a spot, and had them. Yeah, it's a 2-loss team. USC's 1 loss was on the road on a 2-point conversion. I
At
would have
Utah.
USC.
I mean,
Yeah, at
Yeah,
Utah.
the number
That's not
10
an easy
team.
place to play, and it's a really good team. A Utah team that is 2 plays away, or a couple plays away from being probably a top 6 or 7 team. So I thought USC was going to jump LSU. Now USC needs Georgia to beat LSU probably.
Clearly.
For Clemson, though, it seems like there are just far more steps that they're going to have to take, and most of them, outside of just winning, are not in their control at all. And then
Well,
that's not a good position to be in.
no, they're not going to get in the playoff, and that's what happened last night. And I don't know why the guys didn't sort of make that more clear. And I do not think they belong in the playoff. What I'm suggesting is, so, and I've said this to people higher up in college football, if like this is clearly going to be the way that we do things moving forward. There has to be more consistency with messaging. There has to be more consistency with what makes sense. I just didn't. I don't know how much of you watched, Matt, but I just didn't understand it because there are that part. Now I don't think there's too much to be fired up about, but there's going to be these New Year's Six games where you know there's. I mean, those games matter too, and how you place teams and all that stuff. So. Um, LSU, I think, is going to go to the Sugar Bowl if they lose to Georgia. That sets off a chain reaction to where, like Tennessee will probably go to the Cotton. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, but
And
listen, if
Alabama
LSU
will
loses
probably
to
go,
Georgia, if Georgia waxes LSU, I could see them. Now, a 3-loss LSU is going to slip behind Alabama
of course.
with this committee, and that would make that
But
would put
the
Bama in the Sugar Bowl, would it not?
it would, but the Sugar Bowl will make clear who they want. And it may be that they want Alabama. I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
that's what they want.
I think the best case scenario for Clemson is to win their 2 games, go to the Orange Bowl, and play not Alabama. I would, well, but will Bryce Young play in that game? I don't know. But LSU would be a tough draw for Clemson in the Orange Bowl as well. I mean, for Georgia, um, this is about winning and playing in Atlanta, right, Matt? I mean, it's not that complicated for them. You just go and win games that you should win, and you'll play in Atlanta. Now, who they'll play, I don't know. It could be SC. I mean, they very well could jump SC over TCU, and I think they might deserve to jump them. Frankly,
I think you're right. I think if they handle business, which they should, I mean, against Tech and LSU, they should be number 1 playing in Atlanta, probably against TCU. I think
I think so
TCU
too.
probably sneaks by Iowa State. I don't expect them to blow them out. That's been the way they played all year. But if SC runs the table, beats Notre Dame in the process, they should be number 3. I think they would absolutely deserve that. Then you'd have the loser of Michigan, Ohio State. They're done. I mean, that's
Okay,
a
that's what I
tough
was just
position
going
to
to
be in
ask.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, why? Why are they done? Haven't done enough outside the league.
Well, I think they're just not going to get in over an undefeated TCU and
So
one
for
loss USC.
so then it's about the most deserving. See, this is the stretch. I want the best 4 teams,
Yeah.
and I don't think most deserving is really the best way to do it. I was listening to someone on the radio the other day, and they were talking about how, Ryan, we always want number 4 is just a disaster every time. That's not always the case, by the way. I mean, Alabama won the national championship as the 4. They absolutely choked Clemson out in 6-17, and then played Georgia the 3 and the 4. Yeah, that's right. So it can happen, but most 4s are not Alabama.
No, and if we're doing best 4, this TCU team's not in the top 4. If you
Well,
just
yeah, I
watch
don't
them
think so
play
either.
all year, I would have USC ranked above them. And Ohio State and Michigan would probably both slip into the top 4 if that's the case, but that's not how it works here. It's just not. It's not what they do. I mean, we've seen them be wrong about the final top 4 multiple times. So will they get it wrong this time? It just depends on which metric they want to base it on, and we just don't know what that's going to be. We have no idea because it's never the same, and
And
it's frustrating.
it is so stupid because they can say, "Oh well, based on the data, no, man, based on your
Just watch the
eyeballs."
game.
Yeah, dude, you saw Tennessee struggle against Florida. You saw them go into overtime against Pitt. We're talking about Georgia winning on the road at Missouri by 4. and you got Tennessee at 1, Ohio State at 2, and Georgia at 3. Like there, I wasn't gonna freak out that week because it was like, well, what's the point? But as it really, I probably should have because it was not correct. I think it is possible that Michigan or Ohio State, the loser there, Matt, has a real big beef, and it would be a correct one if they stick TCU in over the one of the two of them, or Clemson for that matter. I mean, it's not right. I would say before I throw it back to you, I don't see Clemson jumping the loser of the Ohio State Michigan game because they put them so far back that Clemson that it's I thought that was, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense to me. Like, I mean, Clemson really did play pretty well
Yeah.
this weekend. And did
They got
Alabama?
blown out
I
by Notre
know.
Dame. Yes,
No,
they
I
have one
know.
loss,
I
but
know.
they got drilled.
No, they
So,
don't. They've not looked good. I agree.
yeah,
They've
I
not looked good, but dude, I mean, I was just like, which is it, y'all? That's why I don't hate the 12. Like, if we're going to 12, which I expect soon, by the way, sooner than later to be announced, I don't know I don't trust these guys. I don't trust this committee one bit. This particular one doesn't seem to know what they're talking about.
yeah, I don't. I'm still not fully on board with Michigan. I know they're undefeated. They've won every game. It's going to be really tough for them to go up to Columbus and beat an Ohio State team that I think is better than Michigan. But if they go up there and lose close, yeah, they're going to be, fighting, for themselves to get in. But I think if TCU wins out, they're in. They control their own destiny. I think if USC wins out, they're in. So they're going to be left out. It might not be right, but that's just how it seems to be going this year.
All right, let's quickly pick three games, very quickly. The sort of two of the three traditional big rivalries on rivalry weekend, and then one that kind of flutters around. Matt, you just said you thought Michigan would beat Ohio State would beat Michigan. How about Alabama and Auburn? Just these are
I
straight
think
up picks. These are straight up picks.
Alabama, but I think it's going to be a little closer than people think.
Okay, SC and Notre Dame.
Upset. Notre Dame.
Okay, Matt, I wouldn't be shocked by that. Matt,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ryan.
I got Bama. That game's always weird, but I got Bama.
Bama and then SC and UCLA and
I've
Notre
got
Dame.
SC. I got SC. I don't
And
trust Notre Dame.
how about Michigan and Ohio State?
I got Ohio State by a couple touchdowns.
So you think they covered the line?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, we'll be there in Athens between the hedges. This game is always better in Atlanta, frankly, but we'll take it. I'm not pumped up about the rain, I have to say. Make sure you're picking up Kelee Ringo-Signed books down below. Golly, Ryan's got one of them right behind him there. And our friends at Red Zone over the weekend are going to, and Matt has one too. Great. Congratulations, Matt. There we go. I don't. I have the majestic North Georgia mountains behind me. Red Zone's got a lot of awesome deals this weekend. Make sure you go check them out on Clayton Street downtown in Athens. We're going to see you. We're going to have a lot of SEC week is going to be a big week on Dog Post as usual. So make sure that you're still around and still around. I know that you are going to be around. I see the traffic. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the website.